Okay, so thank you for joining us. This is our Lunchtime Learning webinar on design portfolios. My name is Eugenia. I'm part of the Education Liaison and Outreach team. So I work a lot with schools and colleges to support students with applying to university. This webinar will be about the School of Design at Middlesex University, and we'll also cover tips on supporting students for preparing them for their design portfolios. Claire will be leading this webinar. She's our Director of Graphics and Illustration Programs. So I will pass on over to her to start the webinar. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. And just to note that the webinar will be recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenia, and welcome. So I'm Claire Lewis, and I'm Director of Programs for Graphics and Illustration Programs, and I'm here to sort of speak on behalf of the School of Design. And hopefully you'll find this presentation helpful. But as Eugenia's already said, please feel free to ask any questions if I've missed anything or you want to know anything further. More than happy to answer them. Okay. So the School of Design, here we are. Okay, so the School of Design is basically one of three schools within the wider faculty. So we make up Arts and Creative Industries faculty, and there's three schools are School of Design, School of Art, and School of Film. So today I'm going to be speaking about the School of Design, but I'm fairly sure and confident that actually the portfolio tips that we discussed today are suitable for all three schools and the entire faculty. So just to give you a little bit of an outline about the School of Design itself, just to kind of a few sort of key points before we move on to the sort of the main sort of subject of the talk. Really what we are, sort of our USPs really is we're studio-based teaching. We focus very studio-based focus to it. We have lots of sort of lecturers and specialist technicians within our faculty. We sort of work with real world problems and sort of live briefs. So really sort of basically our focus is quite employability focused. So everything we do, it has that aim of making sure that the students are employable at the end of their 3 years with us, which I'm sure you agree is what's sort of key and most important. We have quite small class sizes, which I think is really important as well, especially in something that is a studio-focused subject. It means that the students get to build relationships with their tutors and vice versa. It means that we get to know each other, and it means that we can really sort of understand our students and make sure we're getting the most out of them and make sure it's a personalised journey for them. And then again, to go back to the point about employability, it's just making sure that what they leave us with is a portfolio that's personal to them as well. Okay, so just to kind of give you a little idea of where we actually are, because quite a few people sort of say to us, well, where is Middlesex? And actually where we are is a really fantastic location. We're just in North London, so we're just on the Northern Line, so a few stops up the Northern Line from Camden Station. So really well positioned. Okay. And then just to kind of give you a bit of an outline of what we cover within the School of Design, we've got all these sort of courses listed. So, you know, we have sort of more design-based ones, so advertising, graphics, and then we have things like illustration. We have the interiors directorate as well, and we also cover fashions. Within our school, we also have a couple of the MA programs, and we also have a foundation. So if any of your students are a little bit unsure about which subject they want to study, which is quite common at this point in their career, a foundation is always a good option for them because they might find that they're sort of between two subjects, and that foundation just allows them to explore those two subjects and make a decision on what actually they would like to go on to study for the further 3 years. Our foundation is built into our degree, so actually it ends up being a 4-year degree. So for example, if they were to apply for BA Fashion with foundation, they would do the foundation and then it would go direct entry into fashion. However, within the foundation, they have got the ability to change pathways if they would like to. So all our courses are based on the same structure, which makes really good way of working actually. So each course, every sort of undergraduate course works on 4 30-credit modules a year. So they do 2 modules a semester, so 2 in semester 1, which now they're just about to finish in the next couple of weeks. And then they'll come back in January for semester 2, and they'll do another 2 modules there. All courses are taught for 3 days a week. And again, to sort of go back to what I was saying earlier, all sort of studio-based teaching. So they're in their studios working with tutors or using the facilities that we've got, working with amazing technicians as well. And that's sort of how it works and how it's structured. And the wonderful thing about that is because we are all structured in the same way, it allows and opens up for opportunities for things like collaboration across courses, which is a really great opportunity for students. Just to give you a little bit of an idea about how we sort of teach at Middlesex and the sorts of things your students would be expect when they came to a university like ours. So the sessions are always quite interactive. We have to make sure that our students are engaged, that there's conversations happening, there's activities that keep them interested, allow them to explore things. We have workshops, so again, very practical because a lot of our subjects are practical subjects. So we make sure that they're practicing what they're learning, so they're putting into practice so that they really understand what they've been told and how to use it. And again, just making sure that they can use those skills and they become employable at the end of the 3 years. So studio practice, again, most courses will have their studios and they'll work in there, working on sort of design projects. So they'll get real world challenges, which I think is really important. So it tends to creep in into the second and third year rather than the first. So the first years are really about sort of the foundations of giving the skills for each of those courses. And then as we start going into the second and third year, we start really looking at real world application. So things like live briefs and getting people in, clients from industry so that they can work with the students. Regularly reviewing work. So again, it's that thing that goes back to those lovely sort of sized classrooms and those relationships we build with our students. So we are making sure that they are constantly getting regular feedback to make sure that they're getting the guidance that they need. So a really sort of personalised support system is in place at Middlesex. Okay. And it would be awful of me not to mention our wonderful facilities. We are so lucky at Middlesex to have the facilities we've got and also the technicians that we have within each of those facilities. So each of our technical staff are practicing artist designers in their own right, and they are all extremely wonderful and enthusiastic and build a wonderful relationships with our students. So we are incredibly lucky to have them. And our facilities are purpose built, so we're very lucky that we're in the Grove building over here on the Middlesex campus. So the building is built specifically for art and design subjects, and therefore it all works and makes sense for us and our students. We have a mix of things. So we've got the traditional and we've also got the modern. So we've got the print rooms that you would expect, but we've also got really wonderful sort of digital media suites or workshops, which are full of the most up-to-date sort of computer and softwares that the students would need. They've also got access to things like photography. They're also very lucky in the sense that they have access to equipment hire. So we have something called a kit hub at Middlesex, which means that students, if they need to borrow a camera, then they can. And that just really levels the playing field in terms of making sure that no one's discriminated against and everyone gets the opportunity for a good education that they deserve. So I already mentioned sort of our wonderful technicians. The other thing I should mention about our facilities, and I think there's something really unique and quite important about Middlesex, is that they're open access. So the students actually can use them when they need to, which is really important for them because what we don't want is students to sort of be introduced to a facility in the first year and then not be able to get in again. So that's not the case here. It is open access and they can book the spaces if they need to. So for example, they could book a photography studio if they needed to, and they'd work with the technicians then and who would help them achieve their goal. So these are just some of the facilities that we have at Middlesex, some of the sort of more key ones to the School of Design. We have others, but these are the ones that really the majority of our School of Design students would be using. So digital print facilities, again, really important for the advertising students, the digital media ones and the graphic students and the interiors actually. They would use these facilities for high-end professional printing. So, they've worked really hard on a project and then they would get their work at the end. We also have photography studios, 3D workshops, some drawing workshops and print studios. So we're very lucky with the facilities that we've got here. So what you've come today to listen to, as well as hear about, obviously Middlesex itself, is about career pathways and portfolios. So as I've already sort of mentioned, employability really is at the heart of all our programs. We understand that students have come here for a reason. They want to be successful in their subject that they've chosen, and they want a career in that. And it can be quite tricky sometimes with art and design, and sort of that bit of an understanding that maybe there isn't so much you can do. So hopefully this kind of helps understand actually what there is on offer here and what people can sort of do within the School of Design, what our students go on to do. So this is sort of actually not all of it, but there's a list of jobs that our students have gone into. So we have graduates in all of these fields. Is work out there for them, and I think that's really important for students to know that actually the creative industries is an employable industry. We have the majority of our graduates do go into employment, which is fantastic. But I also say to students as well, what we really sort of focus on are just those transferable skills as well. So for example, in my graphics class, I'm obviously teaching them to be a graphic designer, but also as a graphic designer, I'm also teaching them to be really good communicators, to be really good problem solvers. And that's really important as well. And we sort of make sure that students are aware of that. But, you know, we have people going off into sort of account management and advertising. We have creative directors. We have people that work in editorials. We've got graduates that work in social media, because that's a real key sort of area in our field these days, you know. So as the world sort of opens up and becomes more digital, actually the world's opening up for more opportunities for our students. So hopefully that does give you an idea of the kind of thing that our students will go on to do when they graduate. So portfolios. So the majority of our courses actually your students would be asked to submit a portfolio, and that's sort of quite normal in our industry. So just to give you an idea of the School of Design courses that ask for a portfolio, it's just sort of listed here. In fact, I've sort of listed a couple there that so in animation, because that sort of quite often crosses over in photography and fine art, just sort of to give you an idea of the courses within the ACI faculty that ask for a portfolio. So it's not all of them, but it is the majority of them. So this really is what I say to students, and hopefully this is kind of what you've come here today, and hopefully it will help you sort of understand sort of what universities are looking for when they ask for a portfolio. But like I say, please do ask questions if you need to know anything further. So we kind of always recommend that they upload, if possible, their portfolios as single PDF. So rather than lots of separate pages, a single PDF is really great. But equally, if they've got if they've got a website, for example, Behance or an Instagram handle that they would like to do, all they need to do is copy that link onto a Microsoft Word document, and then they'll just upload the Word document, and that would work absolutely fine as well. But we find that the PDF is the safest way of doing it, rather than sort of different sort of like PowerPoints and things. So if your students have done a PowerPoint portfolio, just to get them to export it as a PDF, and that's the best way to upload. Okay, so I guess some of these tips are probably going to sound quite obvious, but I think, you know, it's important for students to sort of be aware of it. It's about selecting their work carefully and making sure it's really well organized and presented. And when I say sort of selecting your work carefully, I mean not thinking that you have to put everything in there, because you don't. It really is just selecting sort of key pieces of work that you would like to, or they would like to use to present to us, to sort of show them what their skills are. And normally we say sort of that there is no exact number. Students quite often ask me, how many pages should we have? And there isn't an exact number. You want enough so that we can get a good idea of what the student's capable of, but not too many that you've tried to put in everything you've ever done. So that's what we normally say to them. So somewhere around 15 to 20, but 15 is probably about average, to be fair. So pieces of their best work. And that can include college projects and independent work, anything that shows their sort of skills and their interests. So we ask them to highlight their creativity and their willingness to explore. Process really is our focus. And I think a lot of students think that when we say 15 pages, we mean 15 finished projects, and that's not realistic, because there's not enough time to do 15 finished pieces at college and school. What we're actually looking for is process. So those pages should contain process, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go through. So really just anything that shows us how they experiment, as well as their finished pieces as well. What we always sort of say to them when they are presenting their work, it's useful to put their work against a neutral background. So don't have like a busy decorative background that the work is having to fight against. Just pop it on against a white background, and let the work actually sort of sing for itself. Try and avoid clutter, so not trying to put too much stuff on one page, and just allowing plenty of space for each piece. Because I always sort of point out to students that these are digital portfolios normally. I know some places still do physical, but the majority of people will ask for a digital portfolio, and it's going to get viewed on a laptop or a desktop computer, which is a certain size screen. So if we just think about what size that it's going to be viewed at, it's really helpful if it's spaced out and it's given, you know, it's not too much is put onto one page. It just makes it easier for us to view. Try to keep the text to a minimal, so really brief titles or a brief caption. It doesn't have to be lots and lots of text. I think students' tendency is to write a huge amount of information, and actually it's the work that we're most interested in, and it's always nice just to have a little caption or a title of the project and maybe a sentence to just explain what we're looking at, but that's all it needs to be. And the other sort of tip when they're putting their portfolio together is just to make sure that the images are clear and at a decent resolution. So we sort of say around 250 dpi if they can, but just making sure it's clear and they're not too small and they're large enough, and when they're large, they don't go pixelated. So as I've already sort of said before, really it's about editing their work, and it's about including work that they're proud of and that represents them and their abilities. So obviously the portfolio is about them, and it's about making sure that they end up at the right university on the right course for them that's going to sort of do them well. So it's really important that they know to edit their work and just show us what they're interested in really and what their ambitions are. So the key one really, the thing that majority of courses are actually looking for, not just like the final pieces, we're looking for those sketchbooks. So again, what I was sort of saying earlier about that process, because it really, that reveals the creative thinking. It reveals sort of how they generate ideas and how they solve problems. And it really shows us how they've got from sort of like that starting point and how what journey they've taken to the end, and have they been willing to test things out, and have they learned from their failures, because that's really important too. So to include their sketchbook, really all they need to do is just photograph some key pages. So that's what we ask them to do, because I know obviously again it's a digital format, so if they just photograph their pages and pop them into their PDF, that is perfect. So again, it's about showing their ideas and their process and their research. So their research is important to us as well, not just the process that they take. Well, that is part of the process, but not just like the physical doing of the work themselves. The research is good because it's nice to see what they're thinking about, what they're looking at. And like I've already said, everything doesn't have to be finished. They can just put some process work in and never show us the final piece if that's what they choose to. Because basically it's nice to see how they work, and that's what we want to see. So we want to show how they experiment, what went wrong, what went well. It's basically the journey that they've taken on. Personal projects are also really great because they sort of show us that they're interested outside of college. It's not necessary, but it's always a nice thing. I think it's kind of a little bonus, really, if students have done other projects outside of their course, and then they should be encouraged to put them in. Not loads, but maybe just a hint of things, just so that we can see actually, they're sort of interested and they're engaged outside of their course as well. So in terms of the kinds of work, we get this question quite a lot from students, what should we include? Because it might be that someone's on maybe a more general sort of art and design course, but they're applying to something like interiors, and they might be concerned that they haven't got lots of interiors work, or same if they're applying for fashion, they might have not covered that subject, and that's okay. We would expect that. So what we always sort of say to students is to not worry about that, and to just include a lovely variety of work. So it can be a variety of sort of techniques and media. So they can include drawing, and that might include life drawing, for example, or observational drawing. They might have some painting, they might have a bit of photography or 3D, digital art or mixed media, basically anything that they've been working on that shows their sort of creativity, that's what they can include in their portfolio. So if they have three-dimensional work, then they need to photograph it. But what I always sort of say to them is to remember to consider the photo. So by that I mean just think about the background that the photo has been taken on. Quite often we get students who might take a picture of it, it's been done on their bed or something. So maybe just a nice sort of neutral plain background. So again, that the work just stands for itself and that we can see it really clearly. And if possible, try to showcase one piece that demonstrates their skill. So if we just go back to what I was saying before, we are aware that some people will just have a more sort of general, maybe art and design background, but they're applying for a particular course. So if I take the interiors example again, it's really great if they can try and put one piece of work in their portfolio that does demonstrate what they consider to be their interiors work. And like I say, with not expectation that they would have lots of interiors work, but if they've got one piece, it's always nice to try and put in. Okay, so that was always kind of a bit of advice for them. If they can, they should show evidence of conceptual thinking, so how they've sort of what ideas they've sort of generated, because again, every sort of subject that we sort of teach on is all the basis is about those ideas and the conceptual thinking behind it. And that idea that they've put work in that shows that they've responded to a brief, so that they've been given a set of project in class, and this is their answer to it. It should be full of things that they're proud of. I think that's really important as well, because again, that just makes sure that what we see, it represents them and make sure that we get them onto the right course. And I think another sort of key thing that we need to sort of say to students as well is that we don't, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, we don't expect them to be subject specialists. We're just looking for the potential. So we're not expecting someone who applies to illustration to be a wonderful, amazing illustrator yet. That's the whole point, we're just looking for the potential to be an amazing illustrator. So that's what we're looking for in a portfolio. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of some portfolio pages that across the School of Design that some students have sent in and who are current students with us now. So this is a student who applied to graphics actually. So they had a couple of sort of posters here again, sort of nicely laid out. I'd argue that potentially there's maybe starting to be a little bit too much on the page, but this is a sort of a nice example of a layout in terms of the amount of text that's on there and the clarity of the image so that we can really see that nice and clearly. And again, just an example of some work that a student gave, some of their photography work. So they gave a really lovely sort of mixed portfolio of work. And this was a page where they sort of showed us some of their photography experimentation. I would argue that potentially there's a little bit too much type on there and text. So the explanation doesn't need to be that long. Again, just another example of a page from a portfolio. So this is someone's mood board. And again, this is a really lovely sort of way to see how this student sort of gathered images and inspiration for their project. Another really nice example of just sort of clarity of on the page there. Sort of minimal amount of work, so enough for us to see. Really lovely work. It's got enough space around it so that we can see it properly. And then there's a really just lovely little caption at the bottom just to explain what that is about. This is an example of someone and their sketchbook. So their sketchbook was quite special. So what they wanted to do was not just show the content of the sketchbook itself and what was on those pages. They actually wanted to show us like the format of their sketchbook as well. So they've done that on the left-hand side. And then we get some little sort of diagrams and sketches from their sort of workings and their experimentation. And again, just sort of a doodle and sketch page, which is lovely. This is really wonderful to see in their notes. This really shows process. This shows how the student works. Some life drawing, again, so quite often life drawing can be quite large in scale. So all they'd need to do is just take a photo of it and sort of pop it into a format like this, and we can see that perfectly clearly. And again, just some examples of some drawings and some little bits of printmaking and some experimentation. So a really nice sort of range of things. So this is an example of a page from an interiors portfolio. And this is a perfect example of, if someone's maybe got something with more of an interiors bias, they might include this as their sort of subject specialism page. And then some examples of 3D models. So again, I was sort of saying, if you've got all this wonderful three-dimensional work, then it's fantastic if they can photograph it and put it into a format like this. And that's great. We can see what that work is. Again, just another way, trying to show you a few different ways that people have shown their sketchbook. So some have sort of taken it from a bird's eye view, others have sort of taken it face on, others have just really cropped in on it and just scanned it so it's a completely flat piece. There's no right or wrong way, as long as the student is able to visualize what is in that sketchbook and we can see it clearly. So it's lovely. I mean, I can really see from how they've taken a picture of this sketchbook, you can really see how kind of hands-on and how lovely and almost three-dimensional and how tactile this student's sketchbook is. And again, a little bit more photographic. And that's it for me from examples. So I thought we'd just leave a little bit of time now. Hopefully there's a bit of time for some questions. So please do feel free to ask. I can maybe just check the chat to see if there's anything in there. No, I don't think so. Eugenia, do we have any questions in the Q&A?
Not that I can see. If anyone does have any questions, you can put it in the chat or the Q&A. But I don't think we have any questions at the moment.
No problem.
Thank you for going through that, Claire. It was really great to see all the examples of the portfolios.
No, absolute pleasure. And you've got a couple of slides, so I will let you go through your bit as well. But like
Great,
I said,
thank
just
you.
before you do, Eugenia, just to say thanks for joining us today, and hopefully you found that talk helpful.
Thank you, Claire. So we do have some further support available for your students with applying for university. So if they're currently writing their personal statements, we've got an online personal statement review service. It's completely free to use. All they'll need to do is send through their personal statement as a Word document, and then we'll have a look through, add some feedback comments, and also send them a guide to personal statements and email this all back to them within 14 days. And often it's much quicker than this as well. And if they want to take part in a workshop, we also have an online ACER application webinar, which takes place in January. So it's really helpful for students who are still looking to submit their personal statements ahead of the deadline or are looking ahead to next year. So that takes place on Monday, 13th of January, 4 to 5 p.m. online. If you do have any questions, I'll send through an email after this. And if you want to book any workshops for your students, other events, or are interested in our personal statement review service, I'm able to provide that information. And I'll also share through these slides afterwards. I think that's it. So thank you for joining us. I'll email through the information